So as David said, I have done quite a lot of work on collaborative contracts in a number of different sectors and for a number of different clients. But what I'm here to talk to you about today is collaborative contracts and housing, because that's what you guys are interested in. I think in order to do that, I need to touch on the UK government construction strategy to give that some context and why collaborative contracting and early contractor involvement was such a core part of that strategy. I'll then touch briefly on the Irish housing strategy to put this all into a bit of context. And I'd like to run through some particular case studies of successful alliances and frameworks, again, to just put it into a real life situation. So Richard's just briefly talked about SCMG, and I will go through that case study. That's the supply chain management group set up by Hackney Homes and Homes for Haringey working together under linked framework alliances. And they achieved a lot of supply chain efficiencies there, and I'll come on to talk about that. I'll then touch briefly on Futures Housing Group. David mentioned Futures earlier, and they are one of the early users of the FAC1 contract. They're a UK housing association in the East Midlands that provide affordable housing. And then finally, I will talk a little bit about the Graven Hill Development Company. And as David said earlier, they are delivering the UK's largest ever self-build and custom-build homes programme at Bicester. So the UK government construction strategy, the objective was to deliver 15 to 20% cost saving for the public sector in construction by 2015. The Procurement and Lean Client Task Group was established to support the delivery of the objectives identified in that construction strategy. The group focused on 4 key areas: new procurement models, the intelligent client, the effectiveness of frameworks, and cross-government collaboration. The task group identified 3 models of procurement developed around early contractor involvement. The first of those is cost-led procurement, which David touched on earlier. Integrated project insurance, which again we touched on briefly earlier. The intention of that really is to remove the adversarial culture that is so ingrained in the construction industry. So the client holds a competition to appoint members of an integrated project team, and then they adopt a single project policy for all the delivery risks, covering cost overruns, with the intention being that the blame culture is removed. And the third one was 2-stage open book, intended to reduce industry bidding costs, enable faster mobilisation, and to deal with risk transfer along the supply chain. And the task group worked with clients and government to identify suitable projects to support each of these 3 models and to trial them. And David spoke earlier about the MOJ trial projects at Cookham Wood and North Wales. The task group identified that frameworks should be the preferred procurement route for delivering new procurement models. You see on the slide here, they noted that the general lack of standard form framework arrangements and that makes it difficult for clients to procure frameworks on a consistent basis. They identified a number of key issues of relevance to frameworks, examples being clear duration, strategic pricing, KPIs, the form of call-off contract, and the government trial projects that looked around these 3 models of procurement. They all demonstrated real results. So why collaborative contracting and early contractor involvement? why did all of the 3 procurement models that the government the task group had identified embrace early contractor involvement? Well, new client and industry relationships and behaviours are required, and it supports improved team working, innovation and planning to deliver value for money. Collaborative contracting and early contractor involvement, they allow the integrated team to gain a detailed understanding of the requirements, to deliver innovative solutions, plan and mobilise resources, and manage risk to accelerate delivery and to reduce costs. They identified that lump sum tenders with inadequate documentation won't achieve savings or efficiencies, and that other models maintain competitive tension and cost controls during the pre-construction phase. So, supply chain improvements. Contractors engaging key supply chain members in the design process, and they get added value from that with the early contractor involvement. An early appointment within the budget requires the team to develop costs that do not exceed budget, and transparency of the second-tier appointments of subcontractors and suppliers enables value engineering and informed client decisions. And the other important aspect is a programme pre-construction phase, which ensures design development and testing of costs with subcontractors and suppliers that doesn't delay start on site. So just briefly touching on the Irish housing strategy, and presumably a lot of you in the room know this anyway, but just to run through, the Department of Housing, Planning, Community and Local Government's housing policy is that every household should have access to secure, good quality housing suited to their needs at an affordable price in a sustainable community, helping local authorities and developers to plan and build better and more houses for people to live in. You've then got the Social Housing Strategy 2020, which aims to provide 35,000 new social housing units over a 6-year period to meet the additional social housing supply requirements as determined by the Housing Agency, to support up to 75,000 households through an enhanced private rental sector, and to reform social housing support to create a more flexible and a more responsive system. And as you're all aware, the Housing Agency are responsible for supporting the delivery of that social housing nationwide. So I suppose what I'm talking about here and what we're all talking about here today is how collaborative procurement can assist with this Irish housing strategy and its potential benefits for housing delivery. So what I intend to do is to go through some case studies to show how that's worked in the UK and the benefits of using collaborative contracting in the UK, particularly in the housing sector. So David mentioned earlier the Ministry of Justice Framework Alliance, which isn't housing, but I think it's really worth emphasising the savings achieved on those trial projects. 20% and 26% respectively post-tender savings. Those are huge savings, with SME regional supply chain and apprenticeships going alongside that, and really substantial capital cost savings. The SCMG Framework Alliance, as I said, was a Hackney Homes and Homes for Haringey £200 million capital housing refurbishment project under 2 linked framework alliances using the 2-stage open book model. The SCMG Alliance created a multi-client, multi-contractor team working with a range of SME subcontractors and manufacturers under a standardised system of costing and long-term engagement, and it's really created major savings and significant qualitative benefits. So running through some of the key features, they had an early appointment of a range of Tier 1 and SME, Tier 2 and 3 subcontractors and suppliers. There was substantial saving at main contractor procurement, you'll see there 16%, and through joint working with Tier 1 and Tier 2 and 3 supply chain, again you can see there 14% savings. They achieved reduced waste through lean programming, value engineering and rationalised specifications. They achieved time savings via a new pricing and mobilisation system, and created great opportunities for the SME subcontractors and suppliers. And you can look at this case study, and the case study demonstrates the post-tender savings averaging 14%, agreed through that joint working with the Tier 1 and the Tier 2 and 3 supply chain members. And just some quotes there from the case study. Reduced risks, cost savings and time savings through accelerated constructor supply chain briefing, subcontractor supplier innovations in proposed new materials and specifications and exchange of best practice between specialist competitors, improved repair and maintenance and more sustainable solutions, development of opportunities for local Tier 2 and 3 subcontractors and suppliers, and that's across 30 different disciplines, and additional employment and skills opportunities. So you can really see there the benefits of that framework alliance between the two entities and how that's achieved savings and efficiencies. So moving on to the next case study, again David mentioned earlier, but Futures Housing Group are one of the early users of the FAC1 alliancing contract. And they're going to be using it to procure their planned and responsive maintenance. They had previously used the TPC 2005 based framework successfully, and that's a standard form term partnering contract used in the UK that again David co-authored. And I think for Futures, recent changes to procurement laws have removed the barriers for SMEs, and Futures have been one of the first to capitalise on that by adopting the new framework and processes to make tendering more accessible to those SMEs. It's made it easier for small businesses to bid, and they were previously unable to do that because of cash flow constraints if they took up a big works programme. So they can now get a slice of this significant public contract. One of the reasons for Futures using the FAC1 contract has been as part of a wider focus on SME engagement and creating healthier competition in the workplace and access to a richer pool for the client. And there's also shared objectives for those on the framework, shared suppliers and joint employment and joint training. And the contractors are collaborating with other members for subcontract work, and Futures have seen that using the contract in this way, that they'll be achieving value for money, and it's lean and local with resultant community benefits, training and jobs. So it'll be interesting to see how that progresses, but it's good to see that they are one of the early users of the contract. And then finally, the Graven Hill Village Development Company, which was a company set up by Cherwell District Council. They're carrying out this innovative self-build development, again using FAC1 to do so. What Graven are trying to do is their project has basically been designed to simplify the house building process and to allow people to work collaboratively to build their homes, perhaps creating a block of low-cost apartments or a terrace of eco-homes. And other countries have done this, and it's quite normal in other countries for them to do this self-build way of creating housing. But it's the first large-scale project of its type in the UK, and good to see that as one of those first projects in the UK of doing this, that they are looking at alliancing and collaborative contracting. So Graven Hill are currently in the process of procuring a number of frameworks for groundworks and infrastructure. The first of those being the Golden Brick and Substructure Works contract. Essentially the plots are sold with the foundations, drainage and substructure works the ground floor slab and the utility connections in place, which means that they're zero rated for VAT, so good from a tax point of view as well. And then their second framework that they're currently procuring is for the provision of terrace and mews shells from off-site kit manufacturers. So Graven Hill have seen that there's value in using a standard form that creates a collaborative alliance between the clients, the contractors, the consultants and the suppliers, so that all of the team are working together to achieve greater efficiency and cost savings. And they've seen that it enables shared knowledge and techniques between the teams, it enables improved working practices at all levels of the supply chain, which without an alliance you wouldn't get that. And they've seen the benefit of it avoiding the need to re-procure a new team for every project that they're doing. So I think you can see that some of the projects in the UK where collaborative contracts have been used, it's shown through the government trial projects that savings are achieved and efficiencies are delivered, and that other people are taking up the opportunity to do collaborative contracting and use alliancing contracts because they can see the benefits that brings. So that's it, short and sweet from me.